You've both battled valiantly against the sound of choppers in the air. I mean, there are, of course, there's a lot going on over London today. There's a lot going on the streets of London. These are live pictures coming to you, not from Windsor. Let's get the pictures out of London for our viewers now. This is, well, you know, look at the juxtaposition here. Thousands of anti-Trump protesters in London. These demonstrators want to send a clear message that President Trump and his policies are not welcome. CNN's Atika Schubert joins me now from a packed Trafalgar Square in the middle, Atika, of those protests. Can you hear me? I feared that Atika would struggle to hear me. The police... Okay, Atika, can you hear me?
I do hear you, Becky, and I'm actually near Downing Street because where we are now is with a very small group of pro-Trump supporters, and they've been surrounded by a number of these anti-Trump supporters, with police standing in the middle. And it's pretty tense here, but it's just down the road from where tens of thousands have gathered at Trafalgar Square, the Stop Trump campaign there. So what we have here is basically what I'm seeing now. You might see some of this on our video here. Is a clash. It's basically a war of words right now between those who are for Trump, draped in Israel flags and England flags, and those who are against Trump here, saying that he's not welcome in London. And I think it just goes to show that there are divisions here. Even though this is a much smaller group of pro-Trump supporters and there's a much larger group of anti-Trump supporters here, it shows us how divided it can become here, how divisive this visit has been.
How would you describe the atmosphere? For much of the afternoon, I know that it's been described as sort of carnival atmosphere. Ultimately, does that still feel, even though we're looking at, relatively good-natured sort of discussion, altercation going on here, has it largely been a good-natured affair, these protests?
Absolutely. I mean, I was in Trafalgar Square earlier where we were hoping to go live with you, but frankly, there were so many people at what they call this carnival of resistance, tens of thousands filling Trafalgar Square, filling Regent Street, that we couldn't go live because there were just so many people there taking up the phone signal. But it was largely this carnival atmosphere with kids holding up placards, families out there, and it was very much good-natured, exactly as it was described as a carnival of resistance against Trump. What we're seeing now here is what is a very small pocket of pro-Trump supporters that felt that they had to come out and speak out for him against what seems to be this very large protest that does not want to welcome him. So I think it still remains a carnival-like atmosphere for most of the protests.
Yeah.
In this very small pocket that we're at Downing Street, it has devolved into something of a shouting match between pro and anti-Trump supporters.
Well, that is London. This is Windsor. President Trump and his wife, Melania, leaving Windsor Castle. They have had tea with the Queen. They posed for a photograph in the grand corridor inside Windsor Castle during what was his visit to the UK just on Thursday. We'll get that photo for you as we see, what is this, delegation now heading out. And this has been moving back and forth from London to Chequers, back to London, back to Windsor Castle. The Trumps now on their way, well, shortly on their way back in Marine One. And that's pretty much wraps up this UK leg. Europe, NATO summit, controversial, gets here a controversial interview with the Sun newspaper in which the US President lambasts the UK Prime Minister, only to apologise to her later on today during a press conference. They stood shoulder to shoulder. These are the images of that. It's been a busy day. And then the invitation by the Queen, the Guard of Honour, Coldstream Guards, Windsor Castle tea, back and out of here to Scotland, where Donald Trump will be playing golf for the next couple of days. We won't see him over the next couple of days. We will, though, see him when he arrives in Helsinki for what is slugged to be really quite the moment in time, his one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin. An awful lot going on, but Donald Trump will have enjoyed this last hour or so. These images we'll leave you with. Earlier earlier today, Windsor in England. I'm Becky Anderson. Thank you for watching live from London. This was our coverage of President Trump's visit. We continue now with Wolf Blitzer after this very short break.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. We begin with major breaking news. New indictments in the Russia investigation. Just moments ago, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein, announced that 12 senior Russian military officers have been indicted for trying to interfere with the 2016 presidential election here in the United States.
11 of the defendants are charged with conspiring to hack into computers, steal documents, and lease those documents with the intent to interfere in the election. One of those defendants and a 12th Russian military officer are charged with conspiring to infiltrate computers of organizations involved in administering elections, including state boards of election, secretaries of state, and companies that supply software used to administer elections.
Very strong words. Let's bring in our CNN Justice correspondent, Evan Perez. He was there at the news conference. Also, our senior international correspondent, Matthew Chance. He's in Helsinki, Finland, where President Trump will be meeting on Monday with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Evan, first of all, walk us through this indictment and the specific organizations and the Russian individuals involved.
That's right, Wolf. This indictment actually names the names of 12 military intelligence officers from Russia who worked for the GRU, which is the Russian military intelligence unit. The indictment actually lists their names. It also lists the unit that they worked for in Moscow. It describes some of their communications as they went through trying to essentially hijack computer servers around the world using cryptocurrencies to try to hide their tracks. They broke into the DNC. They broke into the DCCC, as well as people associated with the Clinton campaign. And obviously this is the central focus of what Robert Mueller's investigation is all about, which is to try to figure out what happened in the 2016 election, what were the Russians up to. What we don't see is in this indictment is any indication or any names of any Americans who were participating or who may have known anything about this. As a matter of fact, the Deputy Attorney General in his press conference behind me here just in the last hour made clear, he said that there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in alleged unlawful activity or knew that they were communicating with Russian intelligence officers. This investigation is obviously still ongoing, Wolf. But one of the things that I think in reading this indictment that comes across is it's clear that the FBI, the intelligence agencies here in the United States, have a great deal of communications that were going on between the Russians as well as some of the unnamed people that they were communicating with. Somebody who was in close touch with senior members of the Trump campaign. There was a journalist who was communicated with them to get some of the stolen emails that the Russians had hacked into. And there's also an allegation in here about the Russians' ability to hack into state boards of election. There's the election supervisors, the basics of the way the American election systems work, and they stole the identities of 500,000 voters in the United States. Now, we don't know what they did. This allegation, the indictment doesn't say what they did with that information. They do make clear that they do not believe that this changed any of the vote counts. But clearly, Wolf, the timing of this indictment, as the president is preparing for his summit meeting with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki in just a couple of days, he's obviously said that he's going to raise this issue with the Russian leader. Here, the Justice Department has laid out in plain language exactly who in the Russian military intelligence units were behind this these activities, and we'll see whether or not this is something that the president is able to bring up with the Russian leader. Wolf?
We'll see how that unfolds. Thanks very much. I want to bring in Congressman Adam Schiff. He's the top Democrat, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. He's joining me right now. We've just learned that the top Democrat in the Senate, the Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, has just called on the president, Congressman, to cancel the summit with Putin on Monday in Helsinki, given the enormity of these allegations in this indictment. What do you think?
Well, I agree with him, in particular because none of us have any confidence in what he'll say during that meeting. It has to be of concern, I think, to all Americans that the president wants this meeting to take place out of the earshot of any witnesses. And the president, by framing it that, okay, I will ask Putin about it. We don't need to ask Putin about it. The evidence is ironclad. That's not how you confront someone, by questioning whether it took place or what the Russians may have done. We know what the Russians did, and now it's spelled out again in excruciating detail. This is the thing that really leaps out at me, Wolf, about this indictment, which is, again, the intelligence community has blessed sharing very detailed information about what we know about different members of the GRU and what their responsibilities are and when they took certain actions and what computers they used and where they used them. That is information they do not like to share. But I'm sure they feel, and they're quite right about this, it's important that we let Americans know that the proof is unequivocal. It's important that we let the Russians know this. So, yes, I think the president, frankly, ought to cut his losses with this disastrous trip to Europe and not make it worse by a friendly meeting with Vladimir Putin on the heels of yet another indictment of Russia.
Because the specifics in this indictment are really, as you correctly point out, enormous. They name names, and the U.S. intelligence community hates to do that because they think it could compromise future intelligence operations, and they go through